is hard to imagine which route Ukrainian cinema would have taken without Vasyl Tsvirkunov. This man was a very talented organizer and a scholar who united all like-minded people, promoted gifted artists in their growth, and also protected them from the pressure of the convoluted and dilapidated Soviet party bureaucratic red tape system. Today, Ukrainian poetic cinema is acknowledged all around the globe. It is associated with such names as Sergei Parajanov, Yuri Ilyenko, Leonid Osika, Ivan Mykolaichuk, and others. Their films had the unique Ukrainian national spirit, which Soviet authorities often condemned. It is unclear if Ukrainian cinema would have experienced such a renaissance if Vasyl Tsvirkunov had not been given the director's post at the Oleksandr Dovzhenko Film Studio. He was daring and simultaneously a kind and loving person. He was the only person that Ukrainian poetess Lina Kostenko could love.
Vasyl
Vasylovich Tsvirkunov was a battlefront veteran who feared nothing after all the hardships he had experienced. It defined his character and his modus operandi.
Це визначало всю його людську натуру і визначало його дії. Він і зайшов в цей надзвичайно різнобарвний, складний, творчий, організаційний.
He entered the complex, multifaceted and creatively structured Dovzhenko Film Studio Association, exposed to the difficult process of rebirth after the years of post-war stagnation, when the studio had no production. It was the epoch of revival, and Tsvirkunov accelerated it.
У цей розквіт пощастило прийти Цвіркунову і прискорити його.
Він зорієнтував тематику на
He oriented themes toward Ukraine's needs. He knew well the ethnic and national spirit, and he knew the national topics.
тематика.
It was those movies which appeared in that period that later would become classics of Ukrainian cinematography.
Такого результативного.
He was a remarkable figure who always effectively managed new works never seen before or after his leadership at the Dovzhenko studio.
Приходу і після його.
Everyone who knew him and worked with Tsvirkunov placed emphasis on his tolerance and respect for other people.
Він вмів працювати з людьми. Це приклад.
He knew how to work with people. He was a brilliant example of an extraordinary educator who utilized the methodology of treating people as equals and respecting those with whom he communicated.
До тих, з ким спілкувався. Жодних образ.
There were no offenses or scandals. People who worked in the association adopted his model and methodology, entrusted his interests, and respected his ability to attract all people to find a common ground.
Можливості, як всіх.
As such, they never tried to interfere in his endeavors. On the contrary, they respected them.
І всі йому довіряли.
Politeness, tact, and benevolence were prescribed to him. He was always with the people. He was born in 1917 in a large and poor peasant family in the Zaporizhia Oblast. He was a professor of literature and Ukrainian language and the principal of a local school after graduating from the Luhansk Pedagogic University in 1938. He aspired to ensure that his students and school would be among the best in the country.
Цвіркунов був природженним вчителем.
He was a natural-born educator, which has to be the state of mind. He treated people as his family. Remarkably, he was a village teacher and one of the best. Then he served as a school principal. This work is very demanding. He served on the Soviet-Finnish War and during the Soviet-German War, where he was severely injured.
Історія із його пораненням, з тим, що
His wounds were almost fatal. When he was unconscious, there was another man who survived but sustained a gunshot wound in his hand. He crawled to the front line and reported that there is a survivor, namely his officer.
Сказав, що там офіцер живий, і Василя Васильовича забрали.
The medics took Vasyl Vasylovich and unsuccessfully tried to save his leg. He had an open chest plate and lung.
Грудна клітка.
They hardly believed he would survive. However, Vasyl Vasylovich endured everything.
Практично ніхто не вірив, що він буде жити. А Василь Васильович витримав це все.
Tsvirkunov was the principal of a specialized Air Force school after the war. He worked passionately and selflessly with a profound knowledge of matters. Cadets remembered the honest and generous leader for the rest of their lives.
Контакт із цими льотчиками підтримував все життя.
They kept in touch after that time. When he died, the cadets and now generals recollected Vasyl Vasylovich.
Генералами згадали Василя Васильовича.
This is a historic fact. Indeed, the distance between the Second World War and the new millennium is vast.
Це велика від Другої світової війни і до того 2000 року.
In the 1950s, Tsvirkunov completed his postgraduate studies at the Academy of Social Sciences of the Communist Party while working as secretary of the Luhansk City Committee. He also defended his doctorate. He finished the Academy of Social Sciences of the Communist Party in Moscow, which underscored his readiness to work as an expert in Soviet managerial methodology. In 1962, Tsvirkunov was appointed director of the Oleksandr Dovzhenko Film Studio. Unquestionably, his goal was to keep the work within the ideological frames.
Цвіркунов був партійною людиною, звичайно. Він прийшов на студію з посади
Tsvirkunov was a bona fide party man. He was transferred from the position of head of the Luhansk City Committee. He dealt with issues in education, science, and other applied spheres. He applied his organizational skills at the film studio. Obviously, he knew nothing about cinema. The necessity to have a trusted ideological and party person at the post dictated his transfer. Having no clue about how the film industry worked, he approached it as an educator. He began to study the industry with undying persistence, constantly communicated with people, worked hard, and quickly became aware of all the most relevant nuances.
Шукав відповіді і дуже швидко увійшов у реальний стан речей.
In the beginning of the 1960s, the studio desperately needed interested young professionals. Tsvirkunov searched for them among the film university graduates and other studios.
Тобто він поставився як до класу. Сільський клас у школі.
He treated the group as his class, which had to work towards a common goal and aspire to progress by helping one another.
Учня до себе. І от таких фактично учнів
He found the new generation of students among the young Ukrainian cinematographers, who fortunately came to work at the studio.
На щастя, на студії і з'явилися.
Operator and director Yuri Ilenko, film director Leonid Osika, actor and director Ivan Mykolaichuk, directors Boris Ivchenko, Leonid Bykov, and many others came to the studio. They had a comprehension and a vision of movies that would narrate the lively, human and national character.
Це, власне, те, через що радянські фільми не потрапляли за кордон, зокрема у Сполучені Штати Америки у ці роки.
This is exactly the reason why Soviet films never reached Hollywood. They depicted the screen hero who represented a specific nationality, ethnicity, or society. Unfortunately, the Soviet movies of the 1950s and the first half of the 1960s showed only the Soviet people.
Не розуміли тому, що для них людина була начебто поза ідеологічної системи. Це дуже складно.
Hollywood did not get the concept. This was mostly because for them, an individual was beyond the ideological system. This was a very difficult issue that Tsvirkunov faced. So he tried to resolve this problem by relying on young professionals. He defended them as a civilian, studio manager and director. Sometimes he almost physically fought for them, guarding his group of actors and always protecting them from the crude and detrimental accusations of members of the Communist Party.
На один із якимсь представницьким партійним органом.
Tsvirkunov underlined the lack of authentic screenplays, since the studio worked predominantly with scripts from Moscow. He managed the people who had a knack for writing screenplays for films. His efforts gave an incredible boost to the studio's development. At the exact moment of communicating with writers, he met with Ukrainian poetess Lina Kostenko, who then became his wife.
Тільки Цвіркунов, ні, не дружив.
Only Tsvirkunov could be her husband. She's a brilliant poetess. Though ingenious people tend to have a difficult character as well as a complex fate, Tsvirkunov could submerge into the ocean of passion, capture her attention, and make the poetess of such grace fall in love with him. She loved him all his life. They traveled together all around Ukraine. Tsvirkunov had an old jalopy known as a Zaporozhets. It had a convenient manual control gearbox, which was perfect for him, as he suffered a trauma. Everyone laughed and said, "Buy yourself a Volga." But he replied that the Zaporozhets was just right for him. They visited Cossack tombs and wildlife parks, which Lina loved. Naturally, he got to love it and became her first supporter.
Палким прихильником.
Я бачив, ми працювали з нею над кількома проектами, тоді вже коли не стало Василя Васильовича.
I saw her struggle while I and Lina were working on some projects after Tsvirkunov passed away. I could understand and emphasize how difficult it was to accept his absence.
Суб'єктивного враження про те, як їй стало незатишно в житті, як їй стало без нього важко.
She did not hide her emotions. She dedicated her poetry to him. She described the notion of him being everywhere, which transcends the idea of the last form of existence.
І що це остання форма існування після того, як його не стало.
Tsvirkunov worked as the studio's director for 11 years. Every film produced during this period received public reactions that subsequently led to the discontent of party members with his works.
Догани сипались, звичайно, за все.
He was lectured for every film. He received negative comments for A Spring for the Thirsty that was screened, as well as the ideological aspects of The White Bird Marked with Black, which debuted at the Moscow Film Festival. He was also condemned for the Ivchenko's The Lost Letter, since it depicted a suspiciously large number of Cossacks. In short, the party picked Tsvirkunov to the bone on every issue. The film by young director Vasyl Tsvirkunov, Coordinate Your Watches, overtaxed the patience of Ukrainian ideological authorities. Tsvirkunov invited the director to the Dovzhenko Studio after he graduated from the Moscow University of Cinematography. The film was dedicated to the tragic war stories of young Ukrainian poets.
Створив занадто складний за образним змістом фільм.
Ilyashchenko created the symbolically multifaceted Coordinate Your Watches. It was overly elaborated. Neither the Central Committee nor the audience understood the new screen language. This incident was the last straw in the career of Tsvirkunov as a film studio director. They argued that the studio released a film that nobody would understand. The film was based on symbols, and they were too profound. A Spring for the Thirsty would be a children's fairy tale in comparison with Coordinate Your Watches. Of course, it was linked to other moments. The party members even pointed to Parajanov, whom they despised and criticized. In 1973, Tsvirkunov was fired from the director's post. It was the time for the period later known as stagnant. Under the management of Tsvirkunov, the Dovzhenko Film Studio emerged to the level of world art. As such, he was no longer needed and was accordingly dismissed. First Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine said the following: "At last, we have put an end to Ukrainian poetic cinema. This meant the end for all those who were working on the film industry of the Soviet Ukraine at the time." Tsvirkunov loved new Ukrainian symbolic films. He loved seeing them being released as true cinematography. This is why he tried to make his contribution, to find a way to help its progress. Tsvirkunov was a talented producer and a cinematographic organizer to whom the vast majority of directors owe their careers. It was his defense, his hope, and his trust that nurtured Ukrainian cinema and gave it a major boost. He took all the responsibility for this unique and new development on his shoulders. So thanks to Tsvirkunov, we can proudly say, long live Ukrainian cinema!